So what does this mean for the African continent? Let's bring in Fredrick Kumah, Vice President, Global Leadership at Africa Wildlife Foundation. He joins us live via Zoom from Nairobi. Thank you very much, Mr. Kumah, for joining us. So after the Kunming Declaration to enhance biodiversity, what are the expectations on the African continent on biodiversity conservation?
Thank you very much. First of all, the Africa Wildlife Foundation would like to congratulate leaders for the Kunming Declaration. We also want to congratulate China for its role as the presidency of the convention. What does this mean for Africa? It means a significant, it means a lot for Africa, perhaps in three main ways. Firstly, the declaration actually indicates leadership commitment for change with respect to conservation and the protection of nature. Without leadership commitment, it's very difficult to achieve much. So this leadership declaration, we hope, will then translate into national level action where all of governments will begin to look at the issue of conservation as pertinent to their entire development. And this is really critical. The second key thing really is to acknowledge the resource commitments, especially by China and others, to biodiversity. The $230 million that China has committed for a biodiversity fund will set the stage for other commitments to be made. China's commitment follows commitments that were made earlier last month by international organizations to the tune of $5 billion. However, this amount is not yet enough to address the biodiversity gaps. We need about $700 to $900 billion, as experts say, to cover the needs of biodiversity annually. So this is just the beginning, but we do hope that this beginning snowballs into something that we all would expect that would benefit nature for people's purposes. And then lastly, resources should not just be committed to protected areas. So these resources need to trickle down to communities. And in Africa, communities matter a lot. Conservation in areas where people live, in areas where communities are adjacent to protected areas will be critical. So we need to ensure that the resources that are being made available will be available to those communities. Maybe one other point I want to mention is that China's commitment in this declaration to ecological civilization is going to be a game changer if the world models China's commitment. The idea that the ecology is going to be centered to civilization could trigger a new way of developing economies. And that is critical because then that will ensure that the current approach to consumption and production will be rethought in the context of conservation. And hopefully we will reduce the threat to conservation because of that on this continent.
Okay, so let's bring it home. Like you said, in Africa, communities really matter. So how is this declaration likely to improve the situation in Africa's efforts on conservation?
So we do have over 8,500 conservancies and protected areas, most of which actually are centered around national parks. If the resources that have been made available are adequately made available to communities, then communities can use those resources to develop alternative livelihood means and also be able to engage in ways that contribute to conservation. Many of the places where communities live would require restoration, so resources into restoration would be important, and communities can also engage in activities that further enhance conservation without impact to the ability to continue their means of livelihoods.